The views expressed in this episode, as well as all episodes of Mistaken Identity, are solely host opinions. The content here should not be taken as indisputable fact. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Welcome to Mistaken Identity, the podcast that invites you to discover unity in every tradition. I'm Phoenix Kevlin, and in each episode we explore the timeless wisdom woven through mystic teachings, religions, and spiritual philosophies, all leading us to a deeper connection with one another. And today, I wanted to share a very personal, mystical experience that I had this week. It was really cool. And it happened during one of my meditations. It wasn't a vision, but it was just, I guess, part of the awareness. And I'm really glad it happened to me. It came as a surprise. It was a revelation about being, nature, interconnectedness, all of the things about the perennial philosophy and being a perennialist, I suppose. It's something I think many of us can resonate with in our own way. And the experience was humbling, eye-opening, and it was like a stepping stone. I feel like it was that point of accomplishment, almost like where you'd want to plant a flag and I made it to this point. And it felt like that. And I remember coming out of the meditation with a big smile. And I just really dug it because for me, it was a step toward my journey of understanding what it means to truly be. And I'll get more into that later on because a lot of it just started to make sense. And there was a lot of things that I thought I already had understanding of. And when this revelation happened, it was very clear that I was just beginning on this phase. And that to me is really exciting because there's something really exciting to me about the fact that there's a big journey left to do and it's wide open and different elements are going to come my way. So anyway, I'm just going to get into this. So this was during one of my transcendental meditation sessions, and I do two specifically, one in the morning and one in the evening. So this one was in the morning when I woke up. And for future reference, I may just start calling Transcendental Meditation TM, just for short. So if I do that, please understand that that's really what I'm talking about. And so anyway, fairly new to the Transcendental Meditation. And this was one of my sessions, as I said, in the morning. So for me, it's really important to get myself settled, not to just jump in, but to have a moment where I readjust the chair and make sure that my feet are planted so that they don't start kind of slowly skipping forward, like to make sure that my arms are in a comfortable position such that I don't feel I have to adjust my body in any way. And another particular that I do is sometimes I believe this happens to everybody else, but I'll get like this whistle in my, like more specifically in my right nostril, and I hate it. And it's one of those things that if I get it in the morning, and it doesn't happen all the time, just once in a while, you'll get this whistle. And when you're trying to meditate, it feels like it has the volume of a jet going over the house. It's just really predominant. So I always like to make sure that, okay, the passages are clear. I'm not going to be whistling or making any weird sounds. So I'm doing all of this stuff to get comfortable. And I'm just hands right. Okay. All right. Legs are okay. All right. No skipping. All right. No whistle. Check. And I got myself into the position where it was ready to go. Close my eyes and I'm ready to go. And at that point, there was a sound. And it was this sound that I suddenly became aware of, and it was beyond my control. And it was the sound of water. water running. So to back things up a little bit, we had just had a snowfall a few days before. And then on this morning, we had a temperature rise. So all of the snow was starting to melt. And as it did, it was trickling down the eaves trough right outside of my editing room. And that's where I do my meditations in the morning. And I could hear it going down this metal eaves trough, running with this type of rhythm that was happening. Not a standard rhythm, but it had this unpredictable rhythm. And then at times there would be this occasional pang from water hitting more the metal of the eaves trough other than running down it. And then from there was also the sound of it hitting the concrete splash block underneath the downspout. And obviously different than hitting metal, but I'm picking out all of these nuances of this water trickling and running. So once recognized, and I was aware of this activity that was happening outside my window, I decided to myself, well, you have to get used to this kind of thing. That this is all part of the point of meditation. So I thought this is good practice. This is what meditation is all about, accepting distractions and continuing to focus inward. And, you're not going to have the perfect scenario all the time. So this is good practice. Get used to it. Thank goodness that the water is there as part of this practice. But then it just wouldn't go away, and I couldn't focus. And in my mind, I'm thinking, here I am trying, but the water is winning. And I felt myself becoming annoyed more and more by it. And it kept getting louder and louder and more distracting. And it was off to the left. The left side of my head was just like, listen to this sound. And I found this subtle frustration bubbling up and getting bigger and bigger. And here I am thinking, why now? Why is this water starting during my meditation? Why can't it just be quiet? And then the other thought, of course, when I go to do my meditation, the water's got to be trickling down the eaves trough. Of course, why not? Why me, right? Me. And that's when it happened. That's when that still small voice crept up. And it asked, which element here is following Zen in just being, quote unquote being? And this question made me pause. It really snapped my attention into place. And immediately my mind started racing through very, very quickly, the history of humanity and its development, and how it feels like humanity has been constantly building and constructing ways to remove ourselves, shield ourselves, and eliminate ourselves from nature. To constantly get out of the way so that we are divided against nature, I guess would be the way that I would put it. And here I am, sitting in this box, this house, not that I built, but purchased. And this house, this box, is built to keep nature out. And here I am in this protected space, trying to do my meditation away from nature, ultimately being annoyed by the fact that I wasn't divided enough from nature because I could still hear it. Here I am protected against nature, and I'm the one that's getting upset that it's wrecking my day, it's wrecking my meditation, it's intentionally getting in my way for some reason. But in reality, it wasn't trying to annoy me. It was truly being doing what water does. It was just being, flowing. And the ironic part of this is the box, the house that was built to separate me from nature, rain, water, was just flowing around it. It was an obstruction in water's way, but water was just finding another way, another form to find a niche trough, go down, and continue its path, as nature does. I was being the force that couldn't move, that couldn't adapt, that couldn't find flexibility to get around what water was doing. It was then that I realized a significant difference, and one of the things that perennial philosophy teaches in the relationship of the interconnectedness of all things to the divine ground, and that includes nature. And that is that even though I was meditating, and meditating is about being, everything about being to me was head knowledge. And I realized it at that point. I was trying to be. The water flowing down the eaves trough and doing what it does was truly being, doing what it does, and moving around obstruction. I understood in meditation and in book knowledge and reading and everything else that I've done, I understand the whole concept of just being. I totally dig the Beatles tune, Just Let It Be. But this is the first time that it sank deep that I wasn't actually being. There's a huge difference between knowing all the stuff and understanding it and finding some kind of logic in it and actually relaxing to it, giving into it, letting go, and actually just being. Up till now, I was trying to be. And I suppose in this moment, rain, or actually it wasn't rain, it was melting snow. My apologies. But this was almost in a way teaching me that I didn't understand fully what it meant to be being. And the opportunity was here. So after having this little session of kind of scooting quickly through human history and understanding about building homes to separate ourselves from nature and such, I started to now think deeply about water itself and how really it does embody the essence of just being in so many ways. And they honestly, all of these different concepts of water started hitting me really, really quick and instantaneously. I mean, for me to describe these things is going to be spread out, but they came to me very, very quickly and abruptly. It started with realizing how powerful water can be. Like, I quickly recounted a trip that I took to Niagara Falls once. And Niagara Falls, if anybody's been, or I mean, any waterfall, it doesn't have to be just that location, but Niagara Falls. And just standing at the edge and watching the falls and just taking in the immense weight that was coming over the edge and traveling to the bottom and breaking at the bottom. And the rumble, even the sound had like a weight behind it that just resonated into my chest. Immense power. But then, at the same time, I remembered a trip that I took to Vegas in the middle of July. What a brilliant time to go to Vegas in the middle of July. And of course, it was very, very hot and dry, really dry. And walking along the main stretch, most of the places had canopies that came out over the sidewalk. And the groovy thing is they all had like these little misters that were in the canopies. So as you walk under, you'd get this wonderful mist that would just hit my skin. And it was light and refreshing. And it just, this light dance of moisture on my skin that just was so delicate and cooling. And so I thought about these two contrasts between the falls and Vegas, and that water in its natural form has this huge yin yang. It can be either this incredibly powerful, immense force or something that has this very light dance that's very cooling and refreshing. From there, I thought about water in the ocean. And to me, it actually just was a very powerful thought that even water at the bottom of the ocean with that incredible density. I mean, the amount of pressure at the bottom of the ocean can take one of our most technologically advanced submarines and crush it up like trash into nothingness. Just eliminate it in moments. Incredible, immense pressure. Yet, at the very heart of it, all of that pressure is still little drops of water. More dense, of course, but they still maintain their water characteristics. And it blew my mind even to think, let's not even call them let's call them droplets of water that are that dense and that powerful. Yet conversely, a person can have a single tear, which isn't entirely water. It's mostly water, but there's other, things like oils and whatnot to lubricate the eyes, and there's salt. But it's primarily droplets of water that can just come out of your eye and stream down your cheek. What a contrast! Incredible. From there, my mind skipped over to another particular characteristic of water, and I think it's more our relationship to water. On the one hand, my mind skips over to just children playing with water. And we've all been kids just playing in water, and we watch kids play in water, and there's giggling when there's splashing in the pool. Or even water balloons. We like to capture them in balloons and throw them at each other and splash and giggle and laugh. And it's this uncontrollable energy of happiness and laughter and joy. Splashing in puddles, just being in puddles in its natural form, just being. And yet we'll splash in them, sometimes kind of do that side splash to angle it at somebody beside us. And now it's become part of a game that we're all involved in. But conversely, if the weather conditions are just right on an ocean, a raging tempest, and the waves can become powerful and mammoth, and to anybody that's a sailor, now, all of a sudden, that water is threatening, harmful. It's a juggernaut that's uncontrollable. And these are all just different states of water just being. Not trying to be, just being. And look at all the characteristics it has. Look at all the influence it has. And I became aware that these dualities, it's able to be this crushing, powerful force, and yet tenderly gentle, is part of its nature. It just does it, and that is what being is. So clearly, that's when I started to feel a little humbled, because all this time, I had been trying so hard to meditate, to just be. Like the books say, like my influences have said. But in trying to be, I wasn't being. Really, all this time, I was just being an authentic fake. But before becoming too hard on myself, I did realize that maybe those little stepping stones of head knowledge that I had amassed were necessary to get to this point. Instead of jumping from one to the other, maybe these little steps had to happen so that this realization could occur in this moment. And that's when the really groovy part happened about my meditation, because I suddenly realized that's where I was. I was in the meditation. I had realized that I had stopped paying attention to the sound of the water and fixating on it. I was aware that I could still hear it, but it wasn't an annoyance to me anymore. So truly, with all of this reflection and considering what water was and going into this deeper state, I had forgotten to listen to the water. In a sense, it actually disappeared from being heard. But now it was very significant that I could notice it. But at this point in time, it felt more like I was in sync with it. I became aware of the fact that it did have rhythm. It wasn't 4/4 time, probably more like a progressive rock rhythm, I guess. And the pang that was hitting the east trough felt more like just kind of like a ride cymbal to me. It was all part of the music. And I started to realize that actually my meditation, myself, and the water were harmonious with each other. And it was this profound, really cool experience of just interconnectedness. I was no longer bothered or irritated by it, but I realized as it was being, now I was just being. So my awareness started to realize other physical elements. I started to realize that I felt weightless in a sense, but weightless doesn't really describe it correctly. I'd have to say that it felt like I was unrestricted from my skin. Like my shell didn't feel, I didn't feel pressure from being in my shell, if that makes any sense. My hands felt lighter than light. My feet didn't feel like they were necessarily touching the floor. I was aware that I was in a chair, but it didn't feel like it was really supporting anything. So in essence, it occurred to me that this is what just being feels like. It's just being. And I got so lost in this realm. I mean, the only way that I can really describe it is that it was more silent than silent and more quiet than quiet. More peace than I'd ever known that I can remember anyway. I got so lost in this realm. Oh, it was absolutely fascinating. Absolutely blissful. It was at then, and my timer went off because the sessions that I do with TM are timed. And so my timer went off. And it was then that I had to shake my head internally and realize, I'm still meditating. It was really cool. And the odd thing was that in that moment, I was disappointed. I didn't want to leave that state. And this is the kind of peace and tranquility that I felt. I really didn't want to leave. I guess the best way that I can describe it is kind of like, I remember, my parents leaving at one point when I went to summer camp when I was a kid. And I remember just seeing them drive off as I got left at this summer camp and kind of reaching out like this, don't go, and just realizing that there was no control. There was nothing you could do. It was slipping away. And that's how I felt. I know that I could have stayed in that state, but it was time to pull out of that state and come back. And I just use that child analogy because it's the only way that I can describe realizing that I had to leave that state. But what I loved about that is that as I pulled away from that state, I brought with me what I had learned in that moment. And it was that contrast between the stillness that I experienced and what I usually have is chatter in my mind. And I was also able to bring that peace with me to carry out through my day. And through my day, that new perception of all of the characteristics of water also stayed with me with my experiences through the day. Instead of certain things, like I could go on, but one thing that really stuck out in my mind was my attitude towards vehicle traffic, like traffic while I'm driving. And what I noticed is things that usually would just get at me, such as, I don't know, somebody ahead that's not doing the speed limit, or somebody behind that's following too close, or maybe somebody doing a silly move ahead, like way ahead of me, that it really doesn't affect me at all. I wasn't annoyed by these things. I just realized that I was being in a vehicle, observing other things being. That being said, I'm still being cautious of the rules of the road and aware of my responsibilities. I wasn't in a trance, meditative, zen-like state while I was behind the wheel. It's just that I carried forward that peace and that understanding of life happening around me. And much like learning that the water wasn't setting out to ruin my meditation, life was happening around me as life happens. None of this stuff was setting out to aggravate me. And I felt peace in that moment while driving. Just calm, realizing I'll get home. Everything's going to be just fine. And there were other parts of my day where those were implemented as well. And so that meditation that I had and what water taught me was that specific type of moment with the water is a moment that's always available to me, to us. It's not something to grasp or chase. It's, something to flow into, and much like water, move around an obstruction. So I guess what happened here is that this experience taught me not just about water, or conversely, that water taught me a lot about life. Water has the potential to be a source of joy. With water, children splashing in a pool, jumping in puddles, throwing water balloons. Water has the potential to be a source of joy to others. Or it can also be a source of danger. There's those two contrasts, such as a stormy wave on the ocean threatening a sailor's life. In both cases, it's simply being what it is, its form, its pressure, its surrounding, its conditions, its impact. These changes depend on the context, but its essence remains the same. It's water. In some cases, little droplets. As humans, we often, or at least I can say from my perspective, that I often resist life's flow. We build boxes to shield ourselves, both literally and metaphorically, I guess. Then we grow frustrated when life doesn't conform to our expectations. I think about, regularly, this is another thought, and I'll probably save this for another podcast. Definitely would. I'll probably name it boxes. But we live in a time where we have so much available to us and so quickly. We've got multitudes of streaming services that cater to whatever entertainment choices we have. We have fast food restaurants everywhere. I live in a small town. It's not really that big. The population isn't that huge. But if I go down the main stretch and count how many fast food joints we have, do we really need that many? But we got them. We got them for quick service. You can have your food without hardly any wait whatsoever. We have apps on our phones at our disposal immediately, so we can have instant information so quickly about pretty much anything. And yet, when all of that goes down, we're so inconvenienced. We don't have something quick, something immediate. at least I can say for myself, there's multiple things that I rely on technologically wise. Such that I'm not pointing the finger at society, but even myself with my growth, I catch myself thinking, oh, this went down. What am I going to do? And what am I going to do? Well, I can continue just being. And it's become a little bit more clear to me now. As I look at all of the options that we have for these instant conveniences, to me, I kind of have this vision of almost like we've created these, if you've ever seen like those Russian nesting dolls. And maybe if I describe it, because so it's those dolls where like you have this big doll and you open it up and there's an identical doll inside of smaller size. And you take that one out and you open it up and there's another similar looking doll inside of smaller size. And you just keep opening up and it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And I feel like these are the kind of boxes that we've built for ourselves, not even just houses to separate us from the elements, but even smaller ones that we've got around us all the time. Anyway, like I said, that's for another podcast. But I feel like we're trapping ourselves in layers of convenience and boxes. These layers, I don't know, they make it harder and harder for us to simply be. And in a way, it feels like the more and more conveniences that we've built around ourselves, we've actually become our own greatest obstruction. And what I got from that meditation, unintentionally, but then that's what meditation does. So maybe it was intentional, just happened at the right time. But what I realized was that, like life, like water, simply is. That's all there is to it. And the more we resist, or I should put it into first person, the more I resist, the more I suffer. The more I learn to flow, the more I become harmonious with the world around me. So for me, this experience was an extremely powerful reminder for me to stop trying so hard to be and simply allow myself to be. It's quieter than quiet. It's simpler than simple, and infinitely more profound than words can capture. At least that's what I got from my experience. So I hope that in sharing this experience, my intent was to communicate not just what I realized intellectually from all of my head knowledge, but what I felt at my very core, my being. These moments of harmony and interconnectedness are available to us all, not through trying, although the trying will have to lead up to, surrendering. Like I had to go through the little stepping stones of trying to realize that I was trying and not being, but they're available to us all. And I found that the way I discovered it was through surrendering myself to it. So I guess the next time you hear the sound of water, whether it's the gentle trickle of a stream or a huge thunderous roar from like a waterfall, just, pause for a moment. Maybe it'll remind you of the power and the beauty of simply just being. So thank you for joining me on this exploration of mistaken identity, where we discover unity in every tradition. And I hope today's journey inspired a sense of connection with the shared tapestry of spiritual wisdom. And as we reflect on these insights, please remember what unites us at our core. And if today's episode resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and share it with others on a similar path. So join me next time as we continue to uncover the wisdom that binds us all. And I wish you and your loved ones all the best. Have yourselves a wonderful experience. Bye-bye. Music by Devere Silver.